Étienne's Dilemma. The early morning mist was disappearing. The sun, rising behind the long canoes, tinged the western sky ahead with red. Étienne's paddle stroked in beat with the other 7 voyageurs. He wanted to hurry. He was going home. Last fall, he'd left his Cree village with his father and traveled to Montreal, where he spent the winter. He'd celebrated his 13th birthday on the return trip this spring. Now, he considered himself a voyageur, a Pierre Dubois, which means literally a runner of the woods. Étienne's father, Pierre, was in the boat with him. He too was happy to be nearing the Cree camp. Their companions sensed their impatience and picked up the beat. They surged in front of the other canoes. It had been a successful trip for the fur traders. They visited the tribes as they traveled east. Pierre had traded iron-tipped tools, beads, and guns for furs and had filled the boats with prime pelts. The beaver pelts were the most valuable. They received a good price for them in Montreal. Their company, the Nor'westers, had made a profit. They had left Montreal to return to the Cree village. The western journey was swift with light winds and sunny days. Pierre wanted to see his wife and family. Étienne and his brother René checked René's trapline. They also took their bows to hunt. They soon collected 3 ground squirrels and 2 grouse. Sprawled on the riverbank, René said, "You have not forgotten how to hunt, brother." "No, I had lots of practice. I learned from father and the other voyageurs." Étienne continued, "You should have gone to Montreal when father asked you. I'm glad I went instead, but you would have liked it." "No, Étienne, I am a Cree, not a white man. We have the same father and the same mother, René. We are both half French and half Cree. Maybe in blood, but not in my heart. In heart and soul, I am Cree. I am of the plains. I am one with the prairie grasses. I am a partner of the buffalo, the wind, and the sun. You can be a voyageur if you want. Must it be one or the other, René? Can't our moccasins stride through both camps? Mother is a Cree in every bone. Father is a Frenchman in our midst. He will remain a welcome visitor, but his home is in Montreal." "Well," Étienne said as he rose, gathering up his bow and arrows, "I will be both." As the sun was setting, Upawa, Étienne's mother, sat behind the men with the cradle board, holding her first grandchild beside her. Étienne moved out of the circle where his father was telling of their trip east. He caught his mother's eye and nodded. She handed young Robert to Étienne's sister Mary and quietly followed Étienne out of the teepee. Étienne touched his mother's long hair and said, "Hello, my heart. I have journeyed far from my upbringing." "Yes, Étienne, you have been many moons and many miles since I had you in the cradle board. You are almost a man. You are a strong, straight one with a steady eye and heart. You are very like your father, but also like your grandfather. I am overjoyed to see you." Upawa touched his face and traced his cheekbone with her finger. "I will not ask how long you stay, for I am afraid to know. When I am blessed with 2 strong, healthy sons, I must not hold either from paths they wish to follow." Étienne smiled. He felt like a man after his voyageur trials. He mentioned the rites he must undergo for the tribe to consider him a man. He knew he must travel alone and not eat until he could see his vision. Then he must kill his wolf. Then he could join the warriors as an adult. In the morning, hunters thundered into the camp. They had seen the flocks of crows downwind hovering and soaring over the buffalo. When they stalked closer, they heard the loud, frantic buzzing of insects. They knew the herd was large. It was time for the buffalo hunt. Étienne's grandfather and his friends always told stories of buffalo hunts long ago. The tribe drove the herd toward the buffalo jump. The women and children spread out in a V between the barriers they had constructed. They waved blankets and buffalo hides and yelled. This kept the herd confined so no buffalo escaped as they stampeded toward the cliff. Now with horses and guns, the slaughter was different. René and Étienne rode with the hunters. Without a word, they circled the herd and approached from behind. Étienne's heart was in his mouth. It beat faster than the ceremonial drums. He was with the other young boys behind the hunters. He did not carry a gun. If he could shoot straight, his arrow could slow a buffalo or kill a wounded one. Birds and insects broke the silence. The crows sensed the hunters and yelled a warning. The buffalo became nervous. Suddenly, a shot was fired and the world surged forward. With guns blazing, the men rode at the herd. The air was full of dust and fear. Buffalo and horses' hooves pounded the prairie grasses. Piercing yells cut the air. Étienne's heels spurred his horse into the galloping herd. Guns boomed, bows twanged, horses veered, buffalo fell. It was chaos. Finally, all was quiet. Some buffalo had escaped, and their dust could be seen rising into the blue sky. They had given honor to the buffalo before the hunt. Now each man muttered the words of thanks to the beasts for the gift of their lives. The men dismounted and slaughtered the wounded buffalo. Then the work began. Hides were removed and the meat carved off the bones. Everyone had jobs to do. Étienne worked alongside René to harvest the bones used for tools. It was 2 moon cycles before Pierre talked to Étienne about returning to Montreal. Étienne, it is almost time to travel east again, Pierre said in French. Étienne looked at his father. Pierre saw his expression and hunkered down beside him. "What is it, son?" he asked in Cree. "Father," Étienne answered, "I will not go with you this year." He had been speaking in French, and he now switched to Cree. "It is time for me to become a Cree man. I must take my fasting journey and make my symbolic kill." Pierre stood up, took a step toward the river, and looked at the canoes they had paddled so far. There was a pause before he replied, "I had hoped you would be a French voyageur like me, my son." Étienne spoke his heart. "The world is changing, Father. When I am a man, I can help the tribe change, as your presence has helped them see a new way. I will always be a voyageur and can take a trip with you next year or the year after. My future is with the tribe, and I must prepare to serve them." Later, when the grasses had browned, Étienne stood watching the voyageurs paddle east. He felt again the paddle in his hands. He felt the pull on arm and shoulder as the bow of the canoe cut the water. He stood alone on the shore. When he could no longer see the canoes, he stood on shore. When their song became lost in the wind, he stood. As the dawn reds diminished and the golden sun rose again, still he stood alone, facing east.